I want to throw some names by you.
Okay,
You mentioned, and I just like maybe a one sentence or one or two word blurb as to
I'll
who
try.
comes to mind. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned Artie Johnson. Artie Johnson.
Yes, he was selling suits at Carroll's, and he came in and he came on the front lawn dressed as a Nazi, and he was the Easter egg bunny, and we just put him on the air, and he did all of these accents and all of these improvisations. Artie was a brilliant character actor, but at that point there was no place for him on television. Well, we were the place for Artie Johnson.
Joanne.
Joanne Worley called me from a phone booth in New York, and that voice, that opera, because she was a great singer, that operatic voice, and she was totally outrageous. And she was, we were always a little afraid of Joanne because she could show up at a meeting and turn it into a saloon, and just outrageous, and that voice. And she was funny, and she'd go for anything. Joanne Lily, of course, was a major discovery. That we saw Lily, and she Laugh-In allowed Lily to do 5 characters in 1 hour. So it was the perfect format for Lily Tomlin. So she came in, and we taped some stuff with her as the phone operator, right? And the phone operator, Ernest Tomlin, attacked everybody, and we put that on the air, and Lily went out on the street 2 days later, and the whole world said, "You're the new girl on Laugh-In," right? And the fact that she would attack, is this the party to whom I am speaking, Mr. Gore Beadle? And she would mispronounce people's name, and she would attack everything, industries, and Lily was still remains today a major, major gem in show business. She's brilliant and funny and wonderful.
Richard Dawson.
Richard Dawson was great. He was pretty straight, but he was great. Richard Dawson, and again, he was a character actor. So we bring in Richard Dawson and Artie Johnson and Henry Gibson, and they would all do different characters. Richard Dawson was a funny, funny guy. And the thing was that anybody could walk. We had a script, and the scripts were huge, but we would come in and we would do a reading, and what happened in that reading many times became the script. And it was, they don't do improvisation today. They don't do characters today. Everything is so straight and so controlled and so neat. And at that point, we were a free. I sound like a silly old man, but we were a free fall in show business, and
flying without a parachute.
Yeah, that was it. And then the one I was most dangerous with Alan Seuss. Alan Seuss, who was openly kind of flamboyant and so forth, and I'd walk in and I'd say, "All right, now let's pay attention." Alan would say, "Oh boy, are we regular now?" He said, "Be careful, the captain's on a grump this morning." And Alan Seuss would attack me, which was mainly part of the reason it always worked, because I was literally creatively kind of afraid of Alan Seuss, what he was going to say, what he was going to do. He was totally outrageous with Uncle Al, the kiddie's pal, right?
And how about Ruth Buzzi?
Well, Ruth Buzzi came in, and she was a character actor. She'd worked with Bam DeLuise, and she played all these different characters. And she came in, and she went into our Xerox room and had a little toy piano in there. And she played her own composition of "Don't Futz Around." And it was hysterical. And she came in with all of these different characters. Ruth Buzzi was one of the most brilliant comedians ever, and would go for anything, and would just busy buzzy. When you think back of those shows, this character comedians didn't really have a place on television, and we celebrated them. Buzzy was a trip and a lovely lady.
Was there ever an episode or skit on the show where you truly didn't know if you could pull it all together, either logistically or characteristically or censor displeasing or otherwise?
Well, Richard Nixon was a trip.
Oh, yeah.
Putting him on a comedy show was unheard of. But we needed to do something that would explode. And so Paul Keyes was a very close friend of Richard Nixon. We needed something for the second year. So I said, "We need something special." So he said, "Well, I can get Nixon for you." I said, "Please do." But anyway, we went down the street to CBS. We went in, we wanted just to say "sock it to," and he was a man without any humor.
No.
So when he said "sock it to me," And we put that on the air, and it exploded. The idea of Richard Nixon appearing on a comedy show was unheard of, but that opened the door for a lot of the political people we had. So we put people on Laugh-In that had never been on a comedy show. People on Laugh-In never had laughed, but we would bring them in, do that little brief thing to where when you watch the show, you didn't know who was going to appear, but it was a neck popper, and that was part of the secret of the show. We were flying close to the flame. It was dangerous television.
Yeah, and the element of surprise. Is it true you feel Laugh-In may have had a role knowingly or unknowingly in possibly electing Nixon because of that appearance?
I've had to take the blame for that, because it was the first time Richard Nixon ever appeared when he had a sense of humor, when he was a human, right? So we put this on the air, and within 2 days, people were saying Richard Nixon on Laugh-In, and all he did was sock it to me, and it worked. The secret of Laugh-In was that there were no secrets, that we did things that nobody thought about doing before, and we were taping it, so we would be editing right up until we went on the air. The network was still saying, you can't say this, you can't say that, and we would say something so similar, but it would go on the air, and the next morning people were talking about it. Today, everything is so conformed. Everything is like, even though the language is sometimes shocking, the humor is not. And we had brilliant writers, Digby Wolfe, and all these writers were on there, and they would come in with pages of cameos, and then we would tape till sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, and anybody came in with a funny idea, we'd tape it and put it on the next show. And I don't see that adventure happening today, which is, I kind of miss it.
What's the hardest you've ever laughed while producing the show? Is there a particular skit or a particular event or something somebody said that absolutely floored you that you think might even be the funniest moment that the show ever had?
John Wayne's cameo was pretty funny. I mean, because nobody could believe John Wayne was going to be on Laugh-In because he was the most straight. But every one of those people, Martha Mitchell came on, and all of the political figures came on because they thought it helped get Richard Nixon elected. And I've had to live with that, but we had Hubert Humphrey, and as a matter of fact, we put Nixon on, and then we went after Hubert Humphrey to do a cameo, and he didn't do it. He said not doing Laugh-In may have cost him the election, because when Richard Nixon was on Laugh-In, he appeared to have a sense of humor.
Yeah,
he was almost inhuman until then, but appearing on Laugh-In humanized him, and Humphrey said that may have been what elected him, and I've had to live with that.
Was there any bit that worked that you were absolutely certain was probably not going to work when the idea was first pitched to you?
All of the ideas on Laugh-In, the best ideas, were all dangerous. And was this going to work or not going to work? And we put Martha Mitchell on Laugh-In. We put all of those political figures were my favorite because nobody expected them to be funny. So to pick a favorite moment, John Wayne would rank because he was so straight, and when we asked him to do the show and we taped it in the hallway, he was really angry about it. I'm not going to do that show with those crazy people. Boom, we put that on the next show. And he said, you didn't have a contract. Oh, I'm sorry.
You didn't have any. Yeah, you didn't get anything signed off on, and you still did it anyway.
Sure, but when Wayne heard the reaction to that, John Wayne had never gotten a laugh.
Yeah,
he was killing Indians or something, and so
yeah,
he realized that it humanized him. And
so it helps. Why get pissed off?
I miss the adventure of Laugh-In because we would shoot it. In order to do the editing we had to do, Carolyn Raskin had needed like 4 weeks to do that kind of editing, that tight, 10-second, 15-second bits. And in order to do that, we were taping it right until the show went on the air. We were taping at one end of NBC while we were airing the show at the other end.